say, far more comics accurate than I ever would have anticipated, particularly in that it is faithful to the original version of Mysterio's costume and not the super cool ultimate version that was introduced a few years ago by Marvel. Now that was a special effect. And for those of you who don't know, in the comics, Quentin Beck was a special effects expert and stuntman who, unable to make it in Hollywood, decided to put on a different type of show. Super villainy! But on that note, I can see this maybe being a clever commentary on how Hollywood sees comic book characters these days, right? A few shots at Joel Schumacher, maybe Thor, right? With the cape, he's looking kind of Thor-like, the cape, the beard. That Thor, such a trendsetter, first Vision, now Mysterio. And we all know that this version of Peter Parker is a very big pop culture movie fan. He keeps using it for his plans, right? Wouldn't it be interesting if he went up against a villain who has the same movie reference database that he does? That could be actually really fun. But I think that, you might be like, well, maybe it's just an old school comic book version of the character, Grace. Well, Spider-Man Homecoming offered such a realistic take on many Spider-Man villains, from the Vulture to the Tinkerer to Scorpion and more, which was, I thought that was really well done, by the way. I really appreciated it. So I think that it's reasonable to assume they're going to take the same realistic approach for the sequel, Spider-Man Far From Home. So the only way I can justify this unrealistic costume is if, again, perhaps it is a commentary on superhero movies, right? Now back to visual effects. That could totally change this costume, by the way, because you have to account for lighting when they're filming, the cinematography choices, including like the angle from which the costume is shot. So often something that looks plasticky, as a costume, when you see it in an actual film, you buy it as armor, right? Then also in post, they could add not only visual changes, but they could add sound effects too. And you can see there's some interesting looking discs embedded in his cape, right? And you can also see that there's practical purple lighting built into the front of his chest plate. Speaking of lighting, that has always been integral to Mysterio's look, old and new. So that also makes it particularly hard to judge on set pictures. That ultimate costume, though, whew, what a beauty! It was revealed to be a robot body, sans the head, and there was just smoke coming out of the neck, and then a disembodied floating head was projected onto that smoke, right? So it was being remote controlled. And so the disembodied head had like a magic mirror, or even cooler, a Haunted Mansion Madame Leota vibe to it. That's really great. Probably very expensive to do, even by today's standards, but I don't know. I think maybe it would have been worth it. The only thing that I think would work here is if you do have that amazing commentary on movies, and you can have it with both the villain and the hero. That could maybe make this awesome. I'm also really surprised by the full lumberjack beard. I mean, it doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the look, even though we know Gyllenhaal likes to sport one in real life, right? It's like Chris Evans. I'm not going to dye my hair or shave unless absolutely necessary. But again, it could be Thor inspired. Also, he might be wearing the fishbowl. I think that considering how comics accurate the rest of the costume is, they might have just not gotten a shot of him in it. He seems to be acting in one of the shots, but the scoop online was that this was like a final kind of battle. So maybe, Spider-Man whipped off that helmet at this point, the fishbowl. But if he is wearing a fishbowl most of the time, that would explain why Quentin doesn't feel the need to shave. All right. So I'm very curious to see how this turns out. I loved the first film quite a bit. I related to it a lot personally. Peter Parker reminded me a lot, I think, not only of myself, but he had like the Marty McFly vibe, which has the nostalgia factor to it. That was intentionally so. Tom Holland has said he modeled it off of Michael J. Fox's performance. So the problem, though, is that the first film, it didn't have a big enough feel to it to make a long-term impression. So I hope that they learned from that and they have more epic action scenes here that really turn up the volume because the foundation that was laid with the first film, I think, is spider strong. Also, it's Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal is an amazing actor, and if you don't agree with me, then you clearly have not seen and need to see Nightcrawler and also Okja, those two films in particular. He has a smaller role in Okja, but it's surprisingly nuanced considering how broad he starts out the movie. Also, we're working our way quite quickly to the Sinister Six, because as I told you recently and in one of my streams, I can confirm to you from someone I know in the industry, that Hydro Man is definitely in the movie. So do you like the idea of a potential meta-commentary on comic book movies? Again, I think it's very interesting. And also, considering how much stunts and VFX are part of comic book movies these days for reals, well, Mysterio better represent. And that would be a nice thing too, right? So share your thoughts down below. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.